Okay, well, welcome everybody to the October meeting of the Brisbane VHF Group. We've got almost a 50-50 split tonight between those coming in on Zoom and those of us here in the library. Welcome to everybody. Thanks for joining in. It's one of the informal meetings tonight rather than a business one. So what we've arranged is we've got Peter VK4RCT, who's our treasurer, of course, but also has the hat on as one of the directors of the Wireless Institute of Australia. And he's going to have the floor this evening to talk to us about a few of the issues that are very topical at the moment in terms of the hobby and where that's going and what the Institute's doing. There's a chance for us to ask any questions or anything that we want to know and make any points. Just a couple of little business things. The Hobart meeting is coming up in 2 weeks' time for those of us who are going down, 5th and 6th of November. The next meeting of this group, which of course is the last one of the year, the November meeting's on the 23rd, the Wednesday, and the weekend after that is the spring field day. And hope to get as many people as possible on the bands to make it worthwhile. We're going to put the big station up on Mount Mobilon again. All bands up to probably 47 gigs at least for those who are capable, and give another rattle, see if we can snaffle some more trophies off of those down south. Anybody got any questions or anything they want to say at this stage? Otherwise, we'll hand it straight over to Pete and let him tell us all about it. Okay, over to you, Pete.
Anything happening in the Beacon area?
Peter, I think he's going to talk about that as well. Right. You want to start off with an update on the Beacon? You were going to do that. Over to Peter, VK4RCT.
Everyone hear me okay? Don't tell me if you don't, because I don't care. All right, so a quick update on VK4RCT. It's looking a little bit tidier now. So this is the exciter part of the beacon. So this is the ZL beacon controller. So it's got the GPS and the controller for the JT65 and CW modes, and these are the two PLLs, so I've put them in separate boxes. The only weakness of it is these ribbon cables that I've been talking to Doug about that do the programming, on-the-fly programming of the ZL PLLs. So this is the 6 metre jobby, that's the 2 metre jobby. They've got separate through SMA connectors and dedicated outputs for the two exciters to go straight to the PAs. The left-hand side is the GPS input. Just in the last couple of days, the Raspberry Pi turned up, so I found one, and it's got two RS232 2-port shields on it, huts I should say. So that's for, there's one serial port from the PLL controller. Now I'm going to be changing that cable from the ribbon cable to a shielded dedicated comms cable, proper comms cable, and there's a temperature sensor on there as well. So that's all the information from the beacon in terms of locking and stuff like that comes through that interface. That'll go to the Pi. Just today turned up the little Greek GPS passive splitter. That's from SV1AFN. Really nicely made little box. So that's a passive GPS splitter because the controller, the beacon controller needs a GPS signal for its own internal reference, and the Leo Bodnar 10 meg source, dual source, requires GPS as well. So that's for that. That's about it. Yeah, so the Pi, there's a problem with the 2 metre ZL PLL I need to figure out. I may need to lean on a few other people to help figure that out if I don't figure it out this weekend. Another thing turned up was the Pi power supply. So that's the USB, 12 volt to USB 5.1 supply for the Pi. The Pi will take in the serial port feed from the controller. I use Python script to collect all that stuff, and then there's another 2 serial ports coming from the 2 PA controllers, so I'm going to preserve them, the ones that are made by the previous builder. Pulling information from them. I've got the code for those, so I'm going to disable the DSWR trip, and I build a web page for the Pi to serve, so that you don't need any special software, you just need a browser to see what it's doing, and there'll be some controls in there as well. So that's the plan. actually did a reasonably good job putting the display in for a change. So that's it. So I should have a bit of time to work on it this weekend. I'm not allowed to lift any heavy things for at least till Monday. So I think I can lift a drill and drill some holes and mount a few things.
Oh,
Was that too fast? So I might have to do a couple of photos and send them out. I'll send them out in the mailing list.
That looks really good.
Yeah, so the idea is that that box fits in the top of the existing box with the PAs, and it's not going to change the PAs. The PAs are fine, as far as I believe. I just think it was losing the plot with the controller side of things. That's my theory. It's been running on the bench, my bench, for about 3 weeks now on the 6 metre side. And as far as I can tell from my spectrum analyzer from the IC705, it's clean as a whistle. But it was a 2 metre one that was causing the issues, so I need to dig into that the 2 metre ZLPLL. I went to order another ZLPLL, the standard one and the 10 gig, 14 gig one, and a programming cable. The shop, so Wayne Knowles' shop is showing a 0 stock. So that suggests that he's stopped doing it. So I don't know about getting support from him either. I haven't tried an email yet, but I'll do it if I don't get anywhere this weekend. Unfortunately, so I was just going to replace the 2 metre one with another one and have a programming cable, so I could at least have some confidence I've got a working good one, good one. So if anyone's got one lying in the drawer, they can loan me for a couple of weeks. I'll be very, very grateful.
I got all that, Peter.
You are,
Doug, programming cable, is that what you said?
yeah. Have you got a spare PLL as well?
The old one, yeah, I've got a spare one of those lying around. It's in a box.
Can I borrow it, please? I don't think I need it. I just need to borrow it just to confirm which bit is faulty.
Sure.
That'd be great. Or I'll talk to you later about that. That's awesome. You are now my new best friend.
But in terms of dealing with what's his name, ZL2BKC, about less than a year ago, I think I might have actually rung him. I do have his telephone number, and he said he didn't have anybody who was going to build a batch, so he was off the 14 gig one. So I put my name on that, and eventually it arrived. So it may be that when he can fit it in, he'll build a batch to come to meet current orders or something.
Yeah, well, I want a 14 gig one too for my 76 system. So okay, so
you want to reach out to him, Doug, and ask a question? You've got his
Yeah, I
phone
can do
number.
that.
yeah, if you got contact with him, he may listen to you. I'm not sure if he'll talk to me.
Take the room now, but it's a bit later.
I'm just working out some technical issues here.
Well, that all sounds very promising.
Hey, okay.
You want to see that screen?
Yeah.
I'll just make it full screen. Let's see if that works. Now full screen?
Yep.
Okay. So first up, this is not a sales pitch. This is not rah membership drive talk. It's talking about what this shoot is doing, what it has done, what it's striving to do, some of the issues we're having, and where it fits into the general amateur radio world, locally, state-based, and also all over the world. So for those who don't know me, my name's Peter. I've got 2 call signs at the moment, VK4EA in KQ4PS. That's an extra call in the United States. I've also held 9B1PS in Singapore. Was yo.
Did the cat walk on your keyboard?
Why?
Well, it's all that writing down the bottom there.
That's yeah. I put that through in every occasion to piss people off, and it's worked a couple of times in the last couple of months.
It just looks like a cat walk on the keyboard. That's all.
Yeah, well, I can go through all of them if you want, Tal, but it's pretty boring.
Yeah, it would be because the cat typed it.
Yeah, well, no, it's all, and there's an awful lot of exams to produce those letters, I can tell you.
Well done, Pete. Sorry, mate. I had to have a go through that.
That's all right. I'll send you a spreadsheet later. Yeah, so as Cole's delightfully pointed out, I've got a few letters that I've earned over my 30 odd, 28 years of working. So the main one I'm most proud of is I'm a registered professional engineer Queensland and a senior member of the IEEE. But I'm also at the moment for the next until the next election, where I'm contemplating nominating or not director of the WIA. I'm also an AMC assessor and a volunteer examiners Australia volunteer examiner. So that's I can do US exams as well. So if you can get a US exam, talk to me. I can do that for you. All right, so a bit of history first is the WIA is the oldest amateur radio representative. Roger VK4RCT is not in the room, is he?
No.
Oh, good, because I think I got a few of these facts wrong. He's going to yup me like a drain. Anyway, it's the oldest amateur radio representative body that was formed in 1910. It was originally formed in VK2 in New South Wales. And soon after that, as more amateurs got their licenses before World War II, state divisions started to get formed, and then eventually a federal council was formed to be a advocacy to the feds. Early in 2000, I can't remember exactly which year, it was at the time I got my license. Michael Owen, who was the president at the time of the federal body, did some fairly significant reform to the state bodies and where they were abolished, and the national WIA was born. The remnants of those state-based divisions that stayed incorporated are AA New South Wales and AA Vic, and their role in those states is pretty strong. They do a lot of repeater funding and a lot of other projects involved in the WISN type activities. The Queensland branch and other smaller states, they folded and handed all their assets over to the national WIA. There's some talk about reforming them, so stay tuned. So it's been around for a while. We actually predate the ARRL, which the Yanks hate, but anyway, it's good. So I'm going to start with what we do in terms of international advocacy. So there's three organisations or three events that I'm going to talk about. That's the ITU, the WIC, and the IRAU, and those acronyms will come clear shortly. The ITU, or the International Telecommunications Union, is headquartered in Geneva. So it's the United Nations agency for everything telecoms and information. So that group is charged with coordinating and managing the interaction of all ITU members throughout the world to make sure things are equitable, accessible, and fair. So there's got to be a lot of coordination. So it obviously in Europe, it's a big deal because countries are so close together, but also it's trying to counteract the really, really strong players in the market like the United States and China, who have lots and lots of population and a fair bit of money. So the whole idea is to make it equitable. They, all the members of the ITU are the big players, like all the big phone telco companies. There's member societies of things like security companies and emergency services. So it's not just the amateur, it's everybody that uses telecommunications. Now this text is just a direct lift off their website. So if you Google the ITU, there's a lot more information about what they do, the membership and the events they hold. One of the key events that they hold every 2 or 3 years is the WRC, or the World Radio Conference. So they're held every 3 or 4 years, and they meet to thrash out the regulations that the ITU write. And even though they don't have a great deal of enforcement outside of Switzerland, they local regulators or country-based regulators are obliged to follow the ITU regulations. Sometimes don't, like the Yanks love ignoring it, and certainly the Chinese love ignoring it. They'll go their own way, but it's just best efforts to see, okay, can we work together to make things right? So one of the things that obviously, one example I can think of off the top of the head is the coordination of aircraft frequencies. So if you imagine international aviation, if all those frequencies are ad hoc, and just it'd be a nightmare, and it'd actually be a huge safety issue. So that's one example of that. That was decided a long time ago, and it hasn't changed. And it's unlikely to change. Probably Gary's going to have a comment on that too, because he used to work in aviation. But those things just don't change quickly because it takes a lot of effort to change, and it could affect safety. Similarly with GPS and satellite communications, that's an international thing. So that's all coordinated by the ITU, and they're all done by delegates arguing with each other in committees at the WIC. Now, why am I talking about the WIC is because the WIA fund a couple of delegates to go to the conference. And say for the last couple of years, they're always held in Geneva. I don't know if anybody's been to Switzerland, particularly Geneva. They're there for 2 weeks. And I'll tell you, even the cheapest hostel in Geneva is a lot of Swiss francs. So it's an expensive place to go, expensive place to eat, expensive place to stay. So it's not a cheap thing to do, but the Institute has always believed that we have to be there, and we are invited there. So we don't squander that opportunity to be there to advocate for the amateur radio allocations. And we do that, we don't do that directly, we do that through the International Amateur Radio Union. I'll put up a couple of links on this slide, which won't do anything. I'm not going to click it on now. But they have representatives in many countries. So they're split up into the regions. So the telco, the IT is split up into region 1, region 2, region 3. So region 1 is in the United States, region 2 is Europe, and region 3 is Asia Pacific. So we're in region 3. So as well as the governing body on top, there's 3 sub-bodies for each region. Now we are lucky enough to have 2 Australians on that, one on the board. So the board member for region 3 is Oscar Reyes, VK3TX. He was until very recently a WI board member. So we are very fortunate to have someone in Australia on the board. And on one of the major spectrum organisational committees is Grant Wills, VK5GR. So if you look on the website and look at who the committee members are, there's people from all over the Asia Pacific region. So just think about how good it is to have a couple of Aussies in there as well. So you might have heard of the IRAU. It's actually, the chairman at the moment is a guy from Japan. I can't remember his call sign or name. Probably couldn't pronounce it properly anyway. But yeah, so the IRAU send a fairly decent delegation to the WRC all the time. So it's a fair bit of funding involved. Generally, that's funded by the member societies in each country. Really important to be there. So the member societies that are around our area or that we deal with, we also have a regular contact with the other member societies. So NZART, the ARRL, the RSGB, locally more is the Singapore Society and the Malaysian Society, also the Filipinos, Indonesians, Koreans and Japanese. And the Japanese love us in the IRU. They think it's great to have Australians on board. So there's a fairly good representation, and we have a fairly good dialogue with these member societies. Unfortunately, COVID stopped us doing in-person visits, but one of our board members, Chris Dimitrovic, he's going to Oman next week, so he's going to be going and representing us in a meeting with the local Omani amateur radio operators. So that's it's excellent advocacy for us. He's funding that by himself, by the way. We're not funding that, so before anybody gets uptight. We also have a very good relationship now with the ACMA, or the Australian Communications Media Authority, or the ACMA. And they don't like being called that, so always like to say ACMA. So the ACMA is not the lawmaker, it's the regulator. So we always got to keep that in mind, is they don't make the laws. The Department of Communication, the Minister of Communications federally, generally makes the laws that get passed in Parliament. But ACMA do not put laws into Parliament, so they can't change the law. But what they do have the flexibility to do is to enforce using the license conditions determination, or the LCD. That's the LCD. So the LCD is something we all should be familiar with, and we all should know it. We all should know what the LCD is saying we can and can't do. So that's how they would change things. So for example, the ACMA have the power to allow standard operators on 52 to 54 megs and 6 meters by changing the LCD. The legislation allows them to do that. What the ACMA can't do is change amateur radio operators to scientific operators, because that's in the legislation. They also manage the Register of Radio Communications Licenses. That's probably spelled wrong. So that's the online, it's a Spectra database in the presented as a website. So you can see whether your license is current, who's got what, whose the address is. what class of license they have. That may change shortly. I'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. And the other thing that what's changed probably in the last sort of 5 to 10 years that people may not be aware is that the ACMA do not assign frequencies anymore. They used to. There used to be a very, very big team of frequency assigners. So you'd send the application in for a frequency pair, for a repeater, or for a land mobile spot frequency, or a beacon or whatever, and they would do the assignments. They don't do that anymore. The successive Conservative governments have downsized this authority. That's their idea of minimising the federal public servants. So as a result, that's now privatised, and we're now forced to use authorised persons or APs. So the APs are charged $200 for each frequency to enter that into Spectra, into the information system for the ACMA, and then they cost recover their labour and insurance costs on top of that. So typically, an AP would charge $600 per frequency for every application. That's the commercial going rate.
So these APs used to be former employees of the ACMA?
Sometimes, but generally they're people who own radio shops and have got all the necessary calls. And as long as you've got your public liability insurance current and you demonstrate to the ACMA that you're reasonably competent, you can become an AP.
Very nice part-time job, isn't it?
Yeah. So the WIA have a couple of APs in their back pocket, and they do it on cost recovery basis. So they don't charge us for retail or full charge. They will just charge us what it costs them. And there's no way of getting around that. You can actually put the form into the ACMA, and if you wait 12 months, it may be done. If you use an AP, it'll be done in days, maybe hours, because I've got direct access to the Spectra system. So when you see people complaining about how long it takes to get a repeater or a beacon approved, they probably haven't used an AP, haven't gone through the right process with Peter Mill, our repeater and beacon coordinator. So I just want to make that point that that's totally out of control of amateurs, totally out of control of the Wireless Institute of Australia. It used to be different. I'll go through some of that process a little bit later, and when we go through what the Institute actually does. The other thing that we're in constant contact with is the Australian Maritime College, which is part of University of Tasmania. So we'll see a bit of the AMC, a few of us, when we go down to Hobart Friday week. So they've been charged, they've been awarded the deed for course line management, exams, assessment, and management of assessors. So all that was done by the Wireless Institute of Australia until about 4 or 5 years ago, where there was a competitive process, advertised, a few organisations put their bid in, and ultimately the AMC was successful. So it's very much modelled on how they do their marine licences, on their marine certificate of proficiencies. So what they'll do is recommend a course line to the ACMA at the moment, compile and dispatch and mark the exams. So that's the assessment. And the assessors are basically, and if I'm going to be quite brutal here, are glorified on-bite lickers at the moment. So they just do what an invigilator does, used to. Put the exam on the desk, make sure you don't cheat too much. You do the exam, you sign a bit of paper, throw a bit of money at them. The assessor puts it in an envelope, puts it in the post box. That's basically it. But we are working with the AMC on because the relationship with the AMC between WA has been a bit soured when the deed was first assigned due to other personalities, former board members, not me, not current board members. But I met with the AMC when I was last down in Hobart for the WA AGM weekend a number of months ago. So relationships are a lot better. Education. So we're doing our best to increase the education support for learning providers. And when I say learning providers, I mean basically clubs who run training courses. So the nearest one that I'm most familiar with is Redcliffe Radio Club. They have regular training courses for foundation and advanced, either online or in person or by Zoom or Teams. One thing that we're re-engaging with in conjunction with RASA, the unmentionable organisation I'm not allowed to talk about, but I'll talk about it anyway, with the syllabus review, because if you look at the syllabus at the moment, it is pretty out of date. So we're working on how do we work together to get a syllabus updated so that the questions that are asked in the exam and the stuff that's presented in the training courses are relevant for the 2020s. So the education committee is being formed as we speak. Clubs, so benefits for clubs, what provided clubs is affiliation. So the affiliation gives clubs access to the insurance scheme, which is a fairly broad brushed public liability scheme for covering club members and clubs for when you're out and about in the public. So if a member of the public gets injured and they sue the club, the insurance scheme will not make them go bankrupt. We provide some promotional resources, building it up now. The WA website provides club contact info. It's really important to get up to date. I think the first thing Kev did when he took over was to update our contact details on the Brisbane VHF Group contact details. I'd say that's quite powerful because the first thing, one of the Google searches when someone searches for ham radios, the WA page comes up, or search for radio club, and that page on the WA website comes up pretty high up on the list. So it's a good tool. And clubs get a free half-page mag, AR mag ad per year for events. So that's how we support our affiliated clubs. And the Brisbane VHF Group is an affiliated club. So if we were to hold a handfest or something, or want to advertise something, we get a free half-page ad. So the benefits of what the sort of services we try and provide, and I'm not pretending we provide it very well at the moment, but we are working on making that better. There's a repeater and beacon frequency assignment. So I talked a bit before about APs and how you have to pay money for an AP to get your assignment. That's all coordinated by a gentleman named Peter Mill, VK3APO. He has a couple of APs in his back pocket. And there's a very well-defined process to follow to get that done in a timely manner. And if you decide to bypass any of that process, things break. So if anybody's thinking about it, please, if you don't know how to drive, please see me, go to the website, see if you can find it. If you can't find it, talk to me, put you in touch with Peter to get the process done right. But there will be money involved. There's no way we can get around that now. So it's for a repeater, it might be up to $400 to get you 2 pairs approved if it's a brand new repeater. For a address change or some other change in, say, modulation, I don't think it's that much. But it's a brand new repeater pair or a brand new frequency assignment. So a brand new beacon or something like that, then it's going to cost a bit of money, unfortunately. If you don't like that, talk to your federal politician.
Peter,
Yeah.
what's the situation with, oh dear, what we're going to say, a beacon established by a club outside the rules and it's still on the air?
Oh, you're talking about one up the Sunshine Coast.
So unlicensed, you mean, Doug?
Basically, yes.
Yeah, that's an enforcement issue. So somebody needs to make a complaint to the ACMA. But unless someone makes a complaint, the ACMA are not going to be monitoring that within our bands too much. The idea is that we are self-policing, self-regulating, looking after it all. So it'd strongly encourage organisations to do the right thing. But ultimately, the WA doesn't have any enforcement power. We're not the police. The ACMA are the Spectrum Police.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and the other thing to keep in mind, if it's not causing any issues with any other services, particularly paid services, they're probably not going to put too much priority on it. Because again, they've been downsized by successful Conservative governments because they don't, the public service is bad apparently. So we have almost no radio inspectors. Like back in the 70s, there would have been a radio inspector in every friggin' second car, I think. But now I think there's 4 in Queensland.
I was seeing one the other week driving back from North Central Queensland, but
yeah, so he's in like with the Australian government logo on the side and a few antennas.
the Z,
yeah.
An Isuzu MUX.
Yeah, so I'm actually friends with the main one, and I used to work with Steve Harris, VK4RCT, I think his name is. He's actually an amateur, but he doesn't worry about getting an advance now because he's basically got access to the spectrum. Yeah, so he's actually an amateur. He's quite friendly, and if I need to, I can call him. And he said, "Look, I'll see what I can do, but there's a few things in the way." So just keep in mind that if the GPS service is getting interfered, they'll put priority on that because that's a safety thing. If the aircraft frequencies are getting interfered with, they'll put priority on that. If somebody's button pushing on a repeater, they're probably going to go, "No, you sort it out. I don't care about that. That's not causing any issues." The other thing that we do through the spectrum advocacy is the band plan harmonisation. So it's a continuous process that Grant Wells and the Spectrum Committee is working on to, particularly in the HF areas, to make sure that things like, the FT8 frequency is consistent across the world. Can you imagine everyone working different FT8 frequencies? It'll be a nightmare. Similarly with, where the CW section is and where the sideband section is, it's not ultimately successful and consistent throughout the world, but it's getting better in our region. And that we can thank Grant for that, because it is work with the IRU and with the WIA Spectrum Committee. The other thing too that's on offer for members is a discount card. So you can download your discount card using the MemNet portal. I've actually personally used it, and I've got up to 10%, 15% off at my local electronics. And sometimes I buy a few $100s worth at a time, and it does add up. So it's definitely worth having. So soon pay for my membership fee over and over again with discounts. There's discounts at JCAR and a few other places as well. We've got a very, very good contest coordination committee. So Alan Shannon, VK4RCT, is a legend with this, making sure that there isn't 4 contests on the same time. It's spread out over the year a bit, and coordinated. And of course, the AR magazine, which I think is pretty good. Pretty good extra money. It's a good promotional material vehicle for being on the shelf in a news agency. But every member gets a copy, either electronic or print. So you can let you get it electronic if you want. The structure of the WIA, it's a private company, proprietary limited. So it is a company. It is, the Constitution states it's not for profit. So nobody who's a member or director gets paid. We have one employee, Bruce Defaults, in Bayswater in Victoria, looks after the phones and membership records and a few other things. The managing board consists of 7 unpaid directors, and of 2 of those, President and VP elected by the board. Elections are held every year for 3 to 4 directors. So every year we elect one, half or 3 or 4 directors, depending on the year. And there's a heap of other volunteers that we're very, very lucky to have on board working for us, doing stuff. And that leads into, I think the next slide is about committees. So this is just a few of the committees. There are a number of ones that are dormant. We are looking at reforming a few of them at the moment. So education one just got formed last night. The Spectrum Management Committee, which are just doing an awesome job with it. I'm going to talk about the burning question at the last slide, and that's what these guys are really involved with at the moment. Contest coordination, IT. So there's a bunch of stuff happening. I've got convinced the board to do a new website as of last night. So it took me a year and a half, and there's a lot of back end stuff happening as well. Finance committee, make sure bills are paid and budgets are done, audits are done, and we comply to the Corporations Act, because we have to comply to the Corporations Act. And I'm starting to look around for a social media and digital group to increase our digital footprint. So if you've got any time on your hands, let me know.
That'd be perfect. Scott, wouldn't it?
Okay, and now class license, and I need more power, Scotty. More power. Everyone wants more power. So the ACMA are now going to consider it. It's good news. And we're trying to make it less of the shit show it was last time, when people didn't want to understand what EME was all about. And when I say EME, I don't mean earth-moving bounce, I mean electromagnetic emissions. And I know it more as EMR, as electromagnetic radiation. So the whole power of the whole thing that ACMA are concerned about, and Kevin's going to get in his high horse about this, but it's the potential injuries you're going to cause from strong RF fields. So high power can cause some injuries if you're up close. And I think I'm in agreement with Kevin that long-term RF exposure at low levels causes no physiological effects at all. What they're talking about is if you've got 5 kilowatts and you've got a 20-meter beam and you're squirting that directly into your neighbour's window a few meters away, that's no good. Right, so that's what that means.
It'll warm the house up.
Yeah.
Don't radioamateurs just buy a bigger amplifier?
Well, that's what everyone wants to do. They're going to buy their Quadras and their DX1s and DX5s and what's that thing you got, Kevin? That bloody big Henry thing?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, no. The other thing I will stress is that you can still apply for a high power permit. That's still being considered, but you have to make sure you understand the requirements. That's just going to get all firmed up as we go through this process. Now, the Spectrum Group are currently formulating a response to the ACMA because they're seeking feedback from the amateur community. So what we're going to do we're going to do a survey that's going to include non-members. So if you want to participate in the survey, you just have to register. You don't have to join. We'd love you to join. You don't have to join. And you'd be part of the survey. And the idea is that we're going to ask a number of questions. We're going to get a bit of an idea of what amateurs want with the class license and with more power. So the ACMA have told us they don't want hundreds of form letters saying the same thing. It doesn't help. So we're just going to change our tact a little bit again. And that's similar, and the same sort of thing is going to be happening with the class license. I'll talk a little bit about the class license now. It's the board's opinion that the class license is not all that bad. It's not ideal. We'd much rather have a managed, regulated amateur radio service that's enforced and policed by the ACMA, but that's just not going to happen. So again, if you don't like that, talk to your federal member, get the ACMA resource better.
Peter, isn't the current, don't we currently call it an apparatus license?
That's right. So the idea is to be changed from apparatus license to a class license. Now, for those who are not familiar with the difference between an apparatus license and a class license, just think about your CB radio or your marine radio or your airband radio in your aircraft, your marine radio in your boat, and your CB radio in your car or at home. If you want to be chunking on channel 7, that's an awesome thing to do all day. Those radios would in the past would have had an apparatus license, but there's no need now because they are now covered by a class license. So as long as the radio conforms to a certain number of rules and specifications, so in the case of aviation, it's AM, and it's got 20 watts and all that, and a CB radio is 5 watts only and operates in 477 megs and it's channelized with a volume knob, that's covered by class license. So you don't have to have a certificate of proficiency you don't have to have a license for the radio to operate it. In some services, you need a certificate of proficiency. That's still the case with marine. So you have to go into anything, but it doesn't license the radio. The fact that the radio exists and it conforms to a certain standard, it's automatically covered by a class license.
It's the same as your remotes for your garage door too, mate.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so all that stuff that's unlicensed, so your lipids and mobile phones, they're all class licensed.
Yeah, they're all operated under a class license. So.
Now the kicker is that the ACMA don't have the resources and want to save a bit of money by not charging us for a license fee, because the cost of charging us each year out of 57 paltry dollars is actually costing them money. So it's like back in the CB days, back in the 90s, they decided, no, too hard to collect the CB license, and everyone's a clown anyway, so it's going to let it go nuts. And that's the fear, of course, is that the amateur radio service will turn into what the CB radio service can be in town. So if you listen to Channel 40 on UHF-CB, it's quite the laugh sometimes. That's the fear. We don't think that's going to happen because most amateurs aren't, complete loons and got some mental health issues and taking some strange drugs, I hope. So that's the upshot is that the only kicker we don't know now, the details are in the devil's in the detail, of course, is that we think what will happen is that the deed with the AMC will increase to manage call signs. So the ACMA have agreed to preserve the idea of amateur radio call signs. They recognise how important those things are to us. Our identification, it used to be level license, that's not so much anymore. And they're not forcing the location number. So the VK1, VK2, VK3 doesn't necessarily tell you where you live, where you have your station license. That's basically it. So it's going to be free. The regulation enforcement is going to be pushed back onto the community. So it's up to us to be on our best behaviour and do the right thing.
Isn't that what you're doing now, mate?
Yeah, basically. I've lost my train of thought. Thanks, Cole. So we, at the moment, they're very much leaving it to us to look after. It's up to us to encourage people to operate in a respectful way and to conform to the DX code, for example. I don't think it's going to be a really, really awful thing. However, we're not going to just ignore what the amateur radio community thinks. We're going to run this survey and ask a few questions. So keep an eye on that for the next month or so.
How would a class license exactly work with your radio?
You mentioned criteria.
Okay. So it's not really tested.
No.
Way 20 standards.
No. There's no standards as such.
Okay.
Could I ask Peter a question, if I may?
course.
Thank you.
Roger's there. I might have some details wrong.
No. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. The other day we lost our repeater licenses, and we went through 12 months of turmoil, and all we needed to do was to speak to you or your AP specialist to get the thing done. I can't remember the name of the dude that was stooged us round, but it cost us I don't know, hundreds of dollars and embarrassment and all sorts of things to the people that probably had it. But that's now fixed. So thank you for the heads up where to go. For one, the second one is that we learnt that the that WA was running the repeater. What do you call it? Sending it out lists or whatever you call it, and I was not aware of that, but I found out, and you just confirmed that. The other thing that has come up in recent days is that I don't know what they call it, the in and out, the TX and the RX of the repeater. Is that called the offset? No?
It's actually a frequency pair. So you got to get your receive frequency and your transmit frequency licensed.
Well, the distance, I think on 70 centimetres was about 500 or 600. I believe that's been changed. I'm not sure whether it's relevant to all the repeaters or types or frequencies, but the question I'm asking is that we've not seen anything on any information telling us that we're actually transmitting incorrectly as per our license.
Yeah, and this is where the lack of enforcement comes in, John. Unfortunately.
No, well, it's just that the question is, can't the ACMA send out it'd be a limited letter or something to those that have repeaters to make sure that they're doing it correctly? That's all.
They won't. They're not resourced to do that now, John.
They're not going to do it. Oh, okay.
No.
So
Yeah,
everybody's just going to go on the way they are.
Talk to your federal politician.
No, that doesn't help me. I don't want to talk to them. I'm talking to you because you are part of that person or those people that regulate the repeaters.
No, we do not. We don't regulate the repeaters.
Okay. Well, the question is who has changed that offset?
The offset would be recommended by the repeater coordinator.
The repeater board where?
The repeater coordinator, that's Peter Mill, VK3 APO.
So why isn't he advising everybody that runs repeaters that they're running incorrectly?
He works full time, just like all of us, except for you, retired people.
Well, sorry.
Yeah.
I used to work.
So, no, John, I hear what you're saying, and it's a great idea, but at the moment, even in the Institute, we don't have enough volunteers to do that. It's all volunteer work.
No. Well, you answered my question. So therefore, I have to sort of push the barrier somewhere else, because we were unaware of it until Tuesday night, and we found out that the repeaters weren't being run the way they're supposed to be, and nobody's told us to do it.
Yeah, and it does take there is a bit of technical expertise required to read the license that you get, the way that the emissions designators work and stuff like that, and looking at is your receive and transmit frequencies correct? Is that the right offset? Is that what you wanted? So it's not as easy to read.
Is Redcliffe aligned?
Yeah, I think so. I did all those licenses. They're all good.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to just investigate it. But just that I heard it secondhand. I didn't hear it from any WIA person or anything when we actually got the new license done. So I'll shut up now. But thank you very much.
So John, what the problem we have right now is that we've gone sort of too lean, and we don't have any state coordination. So in the past, this used to be done by Bill. What's his name up in Maloney? Bill VK4RCT, I think. He used to do all that liaison with Queensland clubs and then make that recommendation. But he doesn't do that anymore. And we're now talking about increasing our state representation again to do this sort of coordination and dialogue.
Yeah, we said you were going to talk about that.
Yeah, so the idea is we're going to thrash it out next Friday when we're down in Hobart. But in the old days, there used to be a state-based committee, like a liaison committee. And that's sort of gone by the wayside in most states. It's taken up mainly in New South Wales. It's AR New South Wales and AR Vic. They do a lot of that sort of repeater coordination with the clubs initially, and then talk to Peter Mill about getting the actual licensing done. that doesn't exist in Queensland now. You know, we need this. We haven't really worked out how it's going to work yet, but there's a bit of fundamental change with the institute.
Would you be embarrassed or not want to send out your recording that you've done to other clubs so they're aware of you and what you are doing? And
Well, this is going on YouTube. They'll be going on YouTube in a couple of days, John. So
yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll stick it on our website, but maybe other clubs might like to take it on because they don't know much about the WIA to start with.
yeah, and that's what I'm doing now. Is that there needs to be a bit of promo work. So I'll be down at the Gold Coast Handfest in a few weeks' time, and
Okay.
I'll have that slideshow running. I'm offered to all clubs in Southeast Queensland. It's within a reasonable drive to go and talk to them if they want. This is the first one I've ever done, so I'll make a few changes to the slideshow now.
No, thanks for it because it sort of opened my eyes a little bit, and you could probably open up a few others. Anyway, I'll shut up, let other people talk.
Now, Roger, you're actually on this Veteran Advisory Committee, aren't you? So have you got anything to add to
Yes.
that at all?
Well, I've come in a few minutes late, but the way it's going is that for high power operations, if you want to operate, high power for any purpose in future, they are proposing that an operator obtain a scientific license.
Oh, really?
At some expense. Whereas when we looked at it, it makes no sense to do that when the apparatus license can be, we have an existing license condition determination which can simply be retitled and scaled back to cope for those people who want to run high power for one reason or another. And in fact, the reasons to do so might open up rather than the particularly narrow ones that are available now. So that's the direction that's heading. We've had a look partially at the class license, the proposed class license, and against the current apparatus license, license conditions, and they haven't really done their full homework on translating one to the other. So there's going to be some more work for them involved in that. I think this is going to be worked out over the next 9 months rather than settle it with a submission at the end of November. And I'm not going to think that. That's a general conclusion we've come to. I'm not doing out of school there, so there's a lot of work to do and to settle the various issues that arise. Repeaters and beacons will remain on apparatus licensing. So that's intended to continue as it has done in the past. So that may be a good thing actually, because it deals properly with systems that run 24/7, and we need to maintain that.
Yeah, the coordination across those is important. Yeah.
Is the important thing. Yeah, the thing is that perhaps we don't know what's going to happen with license costs. In that hasn't come up at this point. So that's where it's at. We're going to have to work out how to accommodate being class licensed. The idea of reducing the regulatory burden goes back 35 years. So this is sort of like an end stage move, I guess. It'll be a big change. One of the difficulties that will arise is if you want to go for a business trip or a holiday overseas and take your license with you and get a reciprocal license at your country of destination, or take the license with you to prove that you are appropriately licensed. There's currently no license that you can take away with you. And that's going to have to be addressed. New Zealand has addressed it by providing each licensee with a copy of the entire class license endorsed with their call sign and with appropriate wording for the European CEPT licensing words that that explains what it's about. So there's quite a bit of work to go on to settle this, but it's just a matter of head down, bum up, and plough on. That's it from me.
Thanks, Roger. Yeah, it fills in a few of the blanks, hopefully, people.
Peter, I've got a question, Doug here. About 10 or more, a few more, maybe 15 years ago, there was a lot of excitement about possible licensing for life. And what we've just proposed looks like a backdoor way of achieving that.
Yeah, so the regulatory framework doesn't go beyond 300 gigahertz at the moment. So the regulator doesn't have any interest in anything that happens above 300 gigs. So 400 terahertz is a bit high.
If you're talking about licensing for life, Doug, the life of a government department's operations is 10 years. So that's like 2.5 political cycles, if you like. That's about the best I'm going to get. That the class license will be more or less that. And then there will be something to do with call signs. Are you still using a call sign? Yeah, I didn't talk about call signs, did I? So the AMC or whoever puts their hand up to take a contract, the poison chalice, will be asked to maintain a register and to see if a call sign is still required by the person it was licensed to. It won't be every year, so at intervals, it would seem that they will sort of put their hand up and say, do you still want this? And it'll be yay, nay, or whatever. And if it's no, then the call sign goes back in the pool. So that's kind of the way it's going, Doug. The thing is that what do we do about call signs and the number of call signs, etc. In New Zealand, for example, you can have 2 primary call signs, and that's about it. So it hasn't been raised yet in the current iteration of class licensing. So that's another block of work that we'll have to work on. That will come up in the foreshadowed survey.
I think a lot of that has been highlighted. Some of the difficulties has been highlighted with this, the single letter or the contest call signs, and how that's been pretty poorly managed by the AMC. There's really virtually no visibility of who holds what call sign and where they are and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see how if the AMC gets that extended on the deed, how they manage that.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
So, Roger, maybe just, I'm talking about Grant a bit, but you're on the Spectrum group as well. Who else is participating in the group at the moment? Did anyone hear that question?
Yes, we heard it.
Roger, did you hear that question?
You're breaking up. Can you repeat the question, please?
I was just going to say, thanks for doing this work. I know that you're on the committee and Grant's in the committee. Who else is helping out with you guys?
Sorry, missed it again.
Okay, no worries, no problem. Well, can't hear me that time. I was asking you about the other members of the Spectrum committee. If you heard that, whether you got plenty of resources.
Okay. We're being in this exercise. We're being led by Peter Young, VK3 Mike Victor,
Wow.
who is an ex-ACMA staffer, a regional manager, and so his corporate memory goes back a long way, which is really, really useful. We have President Phil White, VK2ASD, whose corporate memory goes back a long way with the ACMA and dealings ever since the reform in 2003, 2004. We've got VK3 BMI, who also holds a ZL call sign, has a lot of experience in telecommunications and developing submissions to programs and proposals. And Noel Higgins, VK3NH, I think it is, who you'll know has a string of records on the highest band we've been allocated. But he has a long-standing experience with standards and standards organisations, etc. So we've got a wide number of bases covered. So it's really good. The one resource that we're short of is time.
Well, Kevin, that's all I've got.
Can I ask a question? You touched on the possible revisions for high power licenses. I'm just wondering if you had any handle on what might happen with the existing high power licenses. I mean, I've got one of them for the 2 meter EME, for example. Are the existing arrangements going to stay in place, do you think, until such time as a new arrangement is worked out? Or is the current high power license going to expire? Because at the moment you do all the application process only the once, and then it's attached permanently unless you've let your license drop. You know, either of you or Roger got any handle on what might happen?
Well, I understand that they will be carried over until the situation is resolved and new license conditions are actually published.
Okay. And there's a sort of a parallel question. The trial that was done a few years ago about high power HF licenses or an increased power limit, 1,000 watts for advanced licensees. Is there any? It's been mooted. Is there any information that you can share with us about where that issue is likely to go? Are we going to have another chance to clear the copybook and get high power licenses for HF?
Well, the current move about high power operations that are in the proposals certainly concern permitting high power for given bands. So that's the sort of the simple way of putting it, or I should say the simplistic way of putting it. And if we can get a appropriate agreement, it will you would sort of add the new, either the apparatus license or the scientific license to your class license. So it would become a dual license, or in effect, so that you could operate high power on given bands, including HF bands. That's the general way it's moving.
Who's going to police this anyway?
Say again?
I was wondering who would police this anyway?
Good question.
Yeah, well, yeah, because like they haven't got the resources to police anything else. So what's to stop everybody from just going out and running a couple of kilowatts anyway?
What's stopping you now, Cole?
That's it. What's stopping me now?
If you, in reality, if you run clean and you're not tripping off your neighbour's touch lamps,
Yeah.
they won't know.
No, that's right. And they're not going to come around policing it because they don't have the resources.
Well, unless there's an interference complaint, you're endangering life, then you might get a visit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, it takes a complaint. So,
Yeah.
and the amateurs unfortunately are very low on the list compared to something like aviation or GPS.
What about an anti-5G lobbyist?
So a guy got chucked in jail today for one of those. So for a jammer. So yeah, don't build a jammer.
No.
They will find you. They love finding those things.
Yeah, but if you're not causing any interference to anybody, you're just doing your thing. Who's measuring it? Who's policing it? No.
Well, here's a tip, Cole. If you're on the air with 5 kilowatts, don't announce you're using 5 kilowatts.
Exactly.
That would be that'd be one of the top tips you'd get from people.
Yeah, just say 4.9.
That's right.
I always say run 395.
Yeah, maximum legal power.
Yeah. Well, New Zealand don't have a power restriction, do they?
Yeah, they've got 1 kilowatt.
Yes, they do. It's 1 kilowatt.
Oh, 1 kilowatt. Oh, okay, there you go. There's a precedent that's been set. Why aren't we following suit? If we're going to follow the suit,
The issue, Cole, the issue was that last time we did this,
yeah.
amateurs were arrogant about it and didn't follow the rules.
What rules are there? Run a kilowatt.
No, the self-assessment rules, they did not follow them, they did not respect them, and they failed to take the time to understand them.
But does the New Zealand amateurs have to do the same? No, they don't.
But Cole, the argument is, if during the trial that people had done the right thing, we'd have a kilowatt now.
Oh, yeah, I don't have a kilowatt.
They didn't, so we don't.
I got 2.
Yeah.
I mean, the flip side of that is that if you've got a high power station and you're doing all the right things, you want to be above complaints. So it's all very well doing it until somebody complains about it, and then you're in trouble, or you're potentially in grief. If you've done all the right things and we have it all sorted out, and there is a process where you can seek permission and to do that and make sure that you comply with all of the EMR restrictions, then that should be the end of the question. And you're not in the crosshairs of somebody else making a vexatious complaint.
But it's not illegal to own the equipment to do this, is it? No, right. Fact.
But I mean, there are bigger issues out there than the high power, but that is something that's of interest to a lot of people. So it's good that the Institute is looking at that. It's one of many things that we'd all like to be able to do.
So what I encourage all members to do, if you're not a member of the WIA, is please keep an eye out for the survey announcements. so that Roger and the team have a good idea and the board have a good idea what amateurs want and what they think.
Yeah. So any more questions from anybody, either in the room or out there in Zoom land? That you want to ask?
Just to qualify that, I actually got some sort of survey from the, I think it was the WIA or ACMA, I can't remember now, going back some months ago. And it was quite asking questions about different things and relevant things to do with radio. I haven't seen any more of that ever. I'd say it's over 6 months, I think. But I think it was ACMA, I'm not sure.
They do it reasonably regularly, John. So today, the announcement came out for people to have a look at their new online portal systems that they're prototyping at the moment. So if you're not signed up to their alerts, go onto their website and sign up. And there's a specific bulletin for amateur radio service as well. So that they do it occasionally.
Okay.
So it's in everyone's interest to be aware of what's happening with that regulator.
Thank you.
Peter, you are going to make a passing mention about another amateur radio organisation. Are you passing on that one?
I've got to be very careful, Doug, what I do, because one of my platforms when I got elected was to have a unified board.
Good.
So our formal position is what organisation? But I'll tell you, there's a lot of stuff happening in the background about that now.
That's an admirable ideal.
My personal opinion is that if there's no diplomacy, there's no dialogue, there's no diplomacy. Now, Roger was a director on the board at the time that I went poopy in the poopy pants. So we're trying to wind our way back from that situation, but there's an awful lot of issues that I can't talk on behalf of the board on that issue. Sorry.
It's all right.
I can face to face off this and not on YouTube. I will talk to you face to face about my views.
Looks like I'll be seeing you shortly anyway.
Well, at that point, I'd like to thank you, Peter, for taking the time to talk to us. And thank Roger too. Roger came in at the best time about some of the details of what they're doing. And I was about to say, and to thank Roger for his contributions as well. Thanks to everybody for joining in tonight. It's been a good roll up between Zoom and face to face. Just to remind you that we have one more VHF group meeting this year, and that's next month, 23rd of November. And another request for everybody to participate in the VHF Field Day, where the club's running a station on the 26th, 27th weekend in November. And at that point, I'll ask everybody to thank Peter and Roger for their contributions tonight in the usual way. Thanks both.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Very helpful.
Yeah, very informative. Okay, thanks very much. I think we'll, unless anybody's wants to have a chit chat while it's running, we'll close the Zoom recording down at least now. And thank you all for coming in.